Hi there, and welcome back to the Manchester Historical Museum, located at the Trask House here in downtown Manchester by the Sea. I'm John Huss. It's my honor and privilege to be your host, and today the subject of our visit is called sound. Things in our collection that make a distinctive sound for a very good reason. So we're going to start off over here and take a look at this little instrument, a little horn of some sort. In the early days of Manchester, a lot of the income came from fishing. And the fishermen would sail out of Manchester Harbor in small little fishing schooners such as this little gaff rig model we see here. And they'd be out there and pulling in their catch. But they were always concerned if they saw the fog rolling in. Because if they did, they ran the danger of maybe being unseen by larger ships returning to the harbor, and a collision might occur and they might be in deep trouble. So they would have on board this, a foghorn, which they would blow from time to time to warn other boats to where they were sailing so there would not be a collision. A foghorn sending out a position signal to help them get safely back to shore. Now let's get off the boat and go back inside and look at something else. So here we are now safely ashore in the living room of the Trask House on Union Street in Manchester. Here's the next item we have that has to do with sound. I just sent a message on the town's very first telegraph machine. Didn't really send it because it doesn't operate anymore, but it's really quite important that we have something like this in our collection. The town's telegraph office was above the post office, which was on Central Street. And the postmaster, named Julius Robardi, was a veteran of the Civil War. He had returned from the war, having lost a leg in the Battle of Antietam. And he came back to Manchester with a wooden leg, and he became the postmaster, and then he became the gentleman in charge of the telegraph office. He was on the second floor of what used to be Floyd's candy store. Some of you old-timers here who are watching this video may recall the treat you had as a little child or taking your grandchildren down to get candy from Alice Rice at Floyd's candy store. But that's where the telegraph office was located, and that's the machine that was used to send the telegraphs. So we've heard the loud sound of the foghorn, we've heard the clicking of a telegraph machine, and now you're going to hear a very, very pleasant sound. Imagine living in a house here in downtown Manchester in the middle of winter, and you'd hear that sound out the window. And you'd rush to the window, and what you would see was some horses pulling sleighs gone by. And these would be attached to the harness of the horse. So as the horse trotted down Union Street, you would hear that. A beautiful sound indeed in the middle of winter. And here's a photograph we have from our collection, which shows two horses going right down actually Union Street. And one can assume that there were sleigh bells on those horses as well. Well, look at what we have here. This is not a witch's hat, even though we're close to Halloween, but rather the speaker for a Thomas Edison phonograph, an early phonograph that preceded the use of vinyl records. And this is kind of how it worked. You had the machine itself. You would take this large tin speaker and you'd insert it in that hole, and the sound would boom out of there. And the sound would be coming from cylinders, grooved cylinders that come out of a little cardboard box that says Edison Records, and here's a picture of Thomas Edison on the box itself. The title of this particular recording is By the Light of the Silvery Moon, and it was done by the New York Military Band. And you would take this groove tube and it would slip onto this cylinder, and the needle would come down here and it would go into the grooves of the cylinder, and the speaker would be positioned, and then you would crank it and you would hear the music played by the light of the silvery moon. It must have been really something for people to be entertained by this. I'm sure that all the family would gather around in the evening to hear many more of Mr. Edison's famous recordings. The next item we're going to take a look at that has to do with sound is this strange tin instrument. Whenever I give a tour of the collection, I ask people, my visitors, what they think this is, and I've had such suggestions that it's a soup ladle. You scoop up the soup. Other people say, well, you put tobacco in there and you puff on it and you have a wonderful pipe. But neither of those are correct. What this is actually is called an ear trumpet, and it was used for people who had a hearing problem. So you would stick this little nozzle in your ear, and the sound from the music in the house or from people talking would come in through down here and be amplified, and you could hear it. And so this is an early hearing aid. But can you imagine if you were really deaf, you might have to resort to one this big. This is really a monster hearing aid, but at least it helps you enjoy the sounds of your people chatting with you or the music that fills the house. So that's it, folks, the full extent of my musical talent. Played on this little child's piano, little 8-key piano. It's got some very cute, attractive decoration of cherubs dancing above the keyboard. And I'm showing that to you because this isn't the only piano in the house. We've got a full-scale piano as well as a organ, which is in the front parlor. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. Both of those instruments, the piano you're about to see and the organ, were built in this yellow building, which was a furniture factory. It was owned by a Mr. Rust and Mr. Marshall, who we see the two partners standing proudly out in front of their shop. But one of the pianos they made in this shop is especially significant for our museum because it was made for Mr. Marshall's son's 10th birthday as a birthday present. So here he is. Here's the birthday boy a little later in life, Isaac Marshall. 10 years old, he got this wonderful piano given to him by his father, as I mentioned, made in the family shop. It's a great example of what is called a square piano. It's not as big as a grand piano. It's bigger than an upright piano, so it was known as a square grand piano. And just take a look at the intricate carving here in the legs, typical of the heavy design of Victorian furniture. But it's great to have it in the collection, and that's for sure. To conclude our visit to the Trask house today, I ask that you imagine we're living here in town back in maybe the 19th century. And night has fallen over the village and everybody's home safely in bed. But there's somebody still walking the streets of town. He's the night watchman. It's his job to patrol, to make sure there's no crime afoot, no fires breaking out, that everything is in law and order. But if he sees something that's wrong, he has to sound the alarm. And this is how he did it. Don't you think that would wake everybody up? You sure bet. This is called a watchman's ratchet, and it would make that loud sound as a way to alert the populace and the police department that there's trouble afoot. Well, there's no trouble afoot anymore, and I thank you so much for your kind attention and look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.